And to the panel, if you want a completely rubbish election system, look at Tasmania's. I mean, what a joke. How can you get strong government there and stability? The Liberals at Saturday's state election won nearly 49% of the vote on primaries. That's before preferences. Labor was smashed. It got just 28%. Liberals almost half, but under Tasmania's bizarre hair-clerk system, the Liberals will end up with just 12 or probably 13 seats in Parliament out of the 25. Barely a majority. One member rats on the Liberals, goes rogue, and the government may fall, despite this absolutely thumping win. In fact, the ACT has got the same rigged election system, the same hair-clerk system. The Greens there last election got 13% of the vote, won 3, but 24% of the seats. Go figure that. Joining me is the panel, Michael Kroger, former Victorian Liberal President, and Steve Conroy, former Federal Labor Minister. Steve, this broken electoral system is one thing, but let me ask you, how could Labor win just 28% of the vote in a state it used to dominate?
Look, I mean, it's an extraordinary first time historically that Tasmanian Liberal Party will have won 3 elections in a row. First time in history. And Labor would have been in government in this term that was just been completed if it hadn't committed political suicide by deciding it wanted to close down poker machines in Tasmania. They were on track to win that election.
That was the election before.
So, yeah, that was the last election. They should have been in government. GUTWEIN and Hodgkin should never have actually been in charge of Tasmania. They were there. It was there for the taking. So Labor has got a very significant rebuilding to do with its support base down in Tasmania. And that obviously has some federal implications, though I wouldn't read too much into the federal implications in the same way Queensland and WA have got absolute state issues. But no question, Labor have had a poor result. The counts aren't completed yet. They could get up to 9, up to 10, which is about on par to where they've been. But clearly they're still well short of the 13 that they would need to govern. So they've got a lot of hard thinking to do. But
Michael Kroger, I mean, this is a terrible system, the way they've divided it up into electorates and multi-party, multi-member electorates and all that kind of thing, to end up, to have a thumping win and still be scrabbling for a majority government. You might not even get one. There's something really wrong. This has got to be stopped. They've got to go to something more useful.
Well, more useful is to have a proper system. Effectively, they've got a Senate system in the lower house, Senate voting system, which means you only ever win by 1 or lose by a couple. And so the Liberal Party could still end up with 12 seats. There's no certainty they're going to win that last seat in Clark. So, and that Peter Gutwein said he's going to resign if that happens. So, of course, the voting system's terrible. They should change it to a single member electorate. But as Stephen said, no federal implications. Every state and territory government is being re-elected, and status quo. It looks like there'll be the case in Tasmania as well, Andrew.
Steve Conroy,
could I just make the point, Andrew? Just before we change that, could I also say, having spent 20 years in a proportional representation system in the Senate, while that has its uses as an upper house, I don't believe it should be a system used in the lower house. So like yourself and like Michael, I don't believe that PR systems like this should be lower house jurisdictions. Have an upper house if you want that. If you don't want that, don't have an upper house. Look, they've got 13 votes potentially.
I think it's really stupid, and Tasmania is suffering for it. Well, in that case, I'm going to go to Michael Kroger, since you had your bite there. Let me show you, Michael Kroger, a graphic that shows new virus infections per million people. You'll see India is that line at the very bottom of that graph. Of all that spaghetti, it's the bottom spaghetti, the purple line. And look at all the countries above it with more people getting infected per million people, a higher rate of infection. Countries like Uruguay at the very top, Argentina, Croatia, Turkey, France, Brazil, others, Netherlands. But India is the only one with the travel ban. What do you make of all this?
Well, Andrew, it's a terrible situation, and the government decision is wrong. but it's based on medical advice. And I don't think there's any evidence of any state or territory government in the last year or so, or federal government, that has rejected the medical advice. So that's what Morrison and Hunt have done.
How can the medical advice vary from state to state?
Well,
Some states believe in shutdowns and others don't. I don't believe it. And a politician...
Well, the medical guys are always going to say...
Hang on. I'm just being judged on the medical grounds. I say this. The politician's got to work out things like freedom, economy, rights,
Exactly. But I can tell you that Scott Morrison and Greg Hunt feel very, very uncomfortable about having accepted the advice. They don't like it. Mm-hmm. They don't think it is morally right that this is being done. And I would think it'll be overturned before the 15th of May, because they don't feel it's right for Australian citizens not to be able to come home. That's just not within the DNA of Morrison or Hunt. And I know they both feel they had to accept the advice, but you look at the advice and you think, we can't let Australian citizens stay in another country, not be allowed to come back to their own country. Despite the problems we've got here with the state governments, etc., in relation to quarantine, the increased infections in the Northern Territory in quarantine, etc., they morally don't feel this is right. And as I said, I don't think this ban will last until the 15th of May. Well, I think they will.
Steve Conroy,
I think they will.
Well, why is
I've been opposed to this.
About it?
No, Anthony Albanese has called over the weekend for them to justify this. Absolutely called on it.
Yeah, but that's
Sinclair, Bill Shorten. Bill Shorten was first out last week. Bill Shorten said, bring them home. And I've absolutely been shocked by what the government has done. I've genuinely been shocked. Australian citizens, and I thought you're holding up the passport and reading out from the passport what it says. I mean, Australians' governments have a proud history of going and getting our people who are in danger. And the 9,000 Australian Indians are in danger. There isn't the medical situation to support them if they catch COVID. So we've just got to send more flights over and start bringing them home urgently. I'd actually say we should have done the opposite to what's happened. We should have got on the phone to Alan Joyce at Qantas and said, we're commandeering 5 flights tomorrow, the next day. Now, that would, of course, put pressure on our quarantine system. But can we just be clear? The purpose of the quarantine system is to catch the people who have the infection and further isolate them. It's not to go, great, nobody had it when they arrived. As we bring back the 40,000 Australians from the UK, from America, from anywhere in South America has actually got a worse COVID outbreak taking place with a new strain in Brazil, which is causing havoc through South America. But as we bring them home, the purpose of quarantine is to catch them and further isolate them and give them medical help. It's not to say you can't come to a quarantine unless you're clean. What is that?
If they're sick, where do we want Australians to be trying to find medical treatment?
In Australia.
Out there in India, where the hospitals are running out of even oxygen? Or do we look after our own here? I mean, I just think it's so absolutely wrong that the government is following
Imagine how popular...
That's lost its reason, and it should show leadership on this, moral leadership.
Imagine the kudos that Morrison would get. Sorry, the kudos that Morrison would have got if it had said, I am going to rescue our Australians who are in India in a worse circumstance than the rest of the world. Imagine the kudos he would have received. Leadership.
I know. The Indian community would have
political
voted
spin and stunts
for the Liberals for decades to come. Scott Morrison, by the way, Michael Kroger, said for years he wasn't going to fight the culture wars, that there were no votes in free speech, for instance. Now changed his mind. On the weekend, he attacked the cancel culture, attacked identity politics. A very good speech. But will he do anything about it when we've just learned that one of the Liberals MPs who have fought most these culture wars, fought hardest, bravest, Senator Amanda Stoker, his new Assistant Minister for Women, has just been dumped to the hard-to-win 3rd spot on the government Senate ticket for Queensland in the next election, which is basically going to go head-to-head with Pauline Hanson.
Well, I hope he does, because now he's got COVID mostly behind him and the economy is booming. He'll be able to concentrate on some of those other issues where Australia is in a long-term decay in relation to Western values being protected and celebrated. Obviously profoundly disappointing that Amanda has been defeated, but she wasn't defeated by a mug. I mean, McGrath is an outstanding senator, and the Queensland members are not mugs. They voted 2-1 in favour of him. He's a very good senator. He's a very good senator. He fights on different issues that Amanda fights on. But Amanda Stoker will win, by the way. We got 2.7 quotas in the 19 election. Labor got 1.5. And I can't see much receding of the vote in Queensland because Labor are nowhere on energy policy that's going to increase their vote in any great measure in 2022. So Amanda will be re-elected. You know, we got 3 last time. Labor got 1, the Greens and Hanson. So I think it'll probably be a status quo result. Labor got 1.5 quotas and the Greens and
we'll see.
Hanson got 0.7.
Well, Michael's putting lipstick on the pig there, Andrew. Don't fall for that. Any sort of resurgence for Labor, not a huge resurgence, any sort of movement forward in Queensland for Labor. And Amanda Stoker, who I think is a rising star, I don't agree with a lot that she has to say, but she's a rising star arguing her case. She's going to be head-to-head with Pauline Hanson. Because Labor should always Labor should always win 2, and the Green usually wins 1, which means it's Pauline Hanson against Amanda Stoker. It just takes a small tick up in our vote. Michael's saying Labor won't improve. Well, we're already seeing signs that Labor's policy mix is changing to be more attractive in Queensland.
We'll see.
Okay, good stuff. Steve Conroy, Michael Kroger, thank you both so much for your time.
Thanks, Andrew.
Good to talk.